This is Patrick Russell. I'm interviewing Larry Dobbs for the first time. This interview is taking place on August the 5th, 2021 at Clinton, Oklahoma. This interview is being conducted by the Making History Project. Okay, so Larry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good today. Enjoyed the visit so far.
All right. And can you tell me what your birth date is?
4/24/47.
And where were you born?
Rocky, Oklahoma.
And
Population 150.
that was my next question. Can you tell me a little bit about your hometown when you were growing up?
Oh, I was, Dad was a sharecropper, and sharecropper is simply people that own land back in the early 50s and they would buy more land than they could handle, so they would get somebody like my dad and have him work one of the farms, and usually there'd be an old house there, and so we would live in the old house, and Daddy was a good carpenter, so he was always fixing things up. We grew cotton and had cattle and pigs and things like that. At the end of the year, the owner of the property keeps 3/4 of the profit, and Daddy gets 1/4, which was a pretty good deal if you have a good year. But those drought years of 52, 53, and 54, we barely hung on, and that's when I was like 5, 6, and 7, and but Daddy we always had plenty to eat because we had cows and pigs and things like that. And at 6 years old, I would carry coal in a bucket into our heater inside the house in the winter, and had a lid on top. I'd pour it in there and close the lid, and I was responsible for keeping the house warm. No insulation, no phone. Like Roger Miller said, no phone, no pool, no pet. But we had no phone, no electricity, no running water, no heat except the old stove. But you know, we were just darn happy. Lived a mile from our big church. People from all around the country there went to church there, and it was a very strict church. Not as much as Amish, but close. And closed from the outside world, more or less. I felt like I had a wall around our little community. And I studied hard at school. Dad made sure that I learned math and had a great childhood. Our church had always honored the draft. We had one of our members die in World War I, actually, and then World War II, Korea, and on and on. But we always honored the draft. But we was a strict church, didn't believe in killing, and so we didn't think taking a human life should ever happen. But we knew our country had to be protected, so when the draft come along, we gladly succumbed to the draft. Succumb the wrong word. Give over to the draft. So we were trained in non-combatant jobs like cooks, clerks, typists, things like that. Well, also in the medical field, usually in a MASH unit or in a hospital, well, they make me a medic. But I got to Vietnam, and all the medics of this battalion had been killed because the enemy would on purpose pick off the medics because they knew if they killed the medics, the wounded wouldn't survive. And it made sense. I'd never thought of it that way before, but it made sense. But they said, you've got to go out there with them, and I said, well, I don't have a weapon because of my religion, and said, well, the guys will take care of you because like I said, if the medic dies, everybody dies. So anyway, I made great friends out there, and they protected me in combat. And in 1968, combat seemed like it was just a constant struggle for us to survive. And I lost so many friends, and I was the one that was supposed to save them. But when somebody's body is just torn apart and you're out in the jungle, if takes 30 minutes to get a medical helicopter out there and 30 minutes back, and it's just impossible sometimes for those severe wounds with severe blood loss. And I would grieve over it, and I took it on myself to write Sears. It was called Sears and Roebuck back then, but mail order Sears, and I would order things that the Army didn't supply, certain kinds of tape, and we had a lot of trouble with insects, leeches, ticks, every kind of, if it was suck blood, that was there. And I had so many undesirable tasks every morning because the insects sometimes while we're laying, sometimes we would be laying in water because we're on the move all the time. We couldn't have gear to lay down. We didn't have tents, so it just pour down rain, and you lay down in the puddle and try to go to sleep. And insects would crawl inside your clothes, and this will sound gross, but I'll tell it like it is. It seemed like leeches had an affinity of finding a way in your pants and fastening its suction on the anus of the soldier. And of course he sucks blood, and the soldier's asleep. Before morning the thing's 2 inches long, so that was part of the most undesirable thing of my job, was taking care of things in the men's private parts, the rashes, the skin diseases, the leeches and ticks, and all of the things. That was probably the most undesirable. But been a photographer all my life. I love to photograph beautiful things, and I thought I have got to document this, so I made a deal with a photography developing company here in Oklahoma named Al Photo, O-W-L, Al Photo, and I made a deal with them that they would furnish me film. And remember, back in '68, all film was that acetate plastic. It didn't have electronics like we do now, but in the rain and the heat of the jungle, this acetate will stick together in just a few days. So I had to take a roll of film in 2 or 3 days and get it in the mail. And I had this idea that these guys deserved to be, what do they call it, to be remembered, especially the ones that died and were severely wounded. So I made a deal with them that I would, as soon as I got the film developed, the next helicopter to come by, I would send the film in with them and go to Weatherford, Oklahoma. And in Weatherford, Oklahoma, they were instructed to send me one print, and then send my sister at Cordell a duplicate print and the negatives. And the minute I would get the photograph in the mail, I would write the story on the back. The names, dates, where we were at, and all of that. And then I'd get it on the next helicopter out before the ink all run out, and sometimes blood on it and all that, so I had to get it out within 2 days. So my sister we had this idea. She contacted a book publisher, and it happened to be the people that made my high school yearbook, and told them what we wanted to do. We wanted to make a book about this company, and so I was shoving these pictures home. Al Photo was developing them and sending me new films, and I went through my brand new Nikon. It's a Nikon 7. I went through it in like 2 months because it's constant rain. But Dad loaned me money to get another Nikon, and I say loaned me money because there was no money in Vietnam. There was no green money. To keep down drug trade and fraud and all kinds of things in a war zone, there was no American money in the Republic of Vietnam. All cash was kept stateside, and they would pay you every month. It looked kind of like monopoly money. It was a little bit better than monopoly money, but it didn't seem like money. And so the helicopter would come out and pay everybody every month with this pretend money. Well, the only thing you could do with this money would be put it in an envelope and send it back to base camp and tell the bank you want to put it in, and they would transfer money from the Defense Department into the bank account. So that's the way that we paid for everything. But anyway, this publishing company, they published this book, and I'd never even seen it, and made I think 500 of them. And because each person, I wanted the families to have 4 or 5 copies. And of course, the guys paid me for it, and I made enough money to pay the publisher and all the Al Photo and all the people involved. And bless my sister's heart, to this day, she didn't get a dime out of all this work. Her and Daddy spent all this time putting this together for me, and then as time went on, word got out, and Colin Powell, now General Colin Powell, retired General Colin Powell, he was the colonel on the company next to us, and he seen it, and he would come out on a helicopter and asked if I would make a company of all 3 companies. Make a book of all 3 companies, the whole battalion, plus headquarters. And I said, well, I don't know those guys. I don't want to give my life for them. I said, who's paying for this? He said, the money, sure. Keep the money. Publish it if you can. And so the next day, helicopter took me over to A Company. They was about 3 miles over. And I walked up and I said, I've just made this book about my company. Y'all can look through it if you want to, and if you want to buy one, the colonel has told me to take pictures of all 900 men. And so I said, I don't want to stay out here and die with people I don't know. I need to do this today or not. So I took everybody's picture. They was all posing. Everybody took. Each company had about 150 men, and took all their pictures, and I said, then get in a line, and I need you to pay in advance. You got paid today. And this first guy, big black guy, about 3 times as big as me, and he said, I want 12. And that's the way it was throughout the camp. And long story short, we was able to make 5,000 of these books and shipped to the parents, the relatives, the friends, the children of all of the soldiers over there, documented right out there in the jungle by one of their buddies. And I've got a list of, could I hold a book up? This right here, the cover of the book, that's an Ardelian Cortez. 2 of my best buddies in the middle of a intense fire. I had my Nikon, just wasn't even looking, just click, click, click. I didn't even know what I was taking, but it turned out really good. But I did know, there's a deal called broken arrow. A broken arrow is when the battle is so intense, it was just, could be a catastrophe, and everybody's fighting right up close, and a broken arrow, they will actually drop the bombs on you. And we had the advantage by radio, we knew when they dropped them. So we knew when to fall down. The enemy didn't have that privilege. And this was in the middle of a broken arrow. And I was laying on my back, and what we would do in deals like that, we had these little shovels, and we'd just break a little hole, a little trench. We didn't dig foxholes. We didn't dig foxholes because the water table was so high, wouldn't help. And we'd dig a little trench and lay down in it on our back. And we'd dug that little hasty trench, and I laid down on my back, and I seen two F4 jets coming in real low with full bomb load, and I thought, what the heck, I don't know if I catch it or not, and I went click, 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 and I got this picture of the bomb falling right on me. And there's the picture, and the bomb is right behind me, and it come right down just a few feet, and the shrapnel went right over me. But you can see Cortez firing. You can see the empty cartridges flying out and hitting Nardelli. But on the inside, I had a friend at home that done the artwork. And there I am. And this tells the story about my company. And then I had pictures of the men that died. And this lists the men that have died so far. And this right here is this is Albert Fogg III, and that's Pete Hansen. They both died that very day, and I was glad I had pictures for their parents. And right here is one of my very best friends I've ever had. His name is Dennis Naring. He was from Wells, Minnesota, and he was standing right beside me, and I was trying to help another one, and he elbowed me, and I looked around, and he got his shirt, and he ripped it apart like this, and he looked like he was sneezing. And what a time to sneeze! I couldn't figure it out, and he had a bullet right below that top button, and it nicked his car, and he bled to death before I could do anything about it. And then, of course, got pictures of our commanders, and then the book is just filled with just incidental pictures of our everyday life, and then in the back, the little cutouts, and the right there is me with a Bengal tiger. We was in the jungle one day trying to get through there, and this Bengal tiger charged us. Monster. Probably weighed 300 or 400 pounds. And we was able to kill him before he killed any of us. And with that picture there, they're loading him on one of our armored personnel carriers. There's me holding the tiger, and I don't see it right now, but a picture of them loading him up on top of the track because we took it to the nearest village, and they always was short on meat, and they butchered the tiger, and when we left, they still cutting the muscle off the bone. But this was my first book, and then when you see a blue book, this one was the one of all three companies. Now this one, since we've collected enough money, we've got to do it in color. And this is actual combat. We've been attacked to our left, and I got a man down right there. And so, like I said, I'm a conscientious objector, so it was, but it didn't matter because the first shot that rings out, somebody's going down, and then my job starts. And so I was able, in our deli, I was able to pull him back. He didn't die. The biggest regret I've got in my book, and here's typical of the landscape. We had some pretty tall mountains that we had to patrol over, but it was beautiful. I mean, it was like a vacation spot, except for the insects and all of that. And there's me and the little story that I wrote about it. And the only time we ever got to take a shower, it was about once a month. There's a little bag right there on that pole, pour it full of water, and it pours out the bottom, and then of course you're standing naked with 40 men watching you. But here's my biggest regret on the whole book, and I look back now and I wonder how I missed it, because I tried to be respectful to the men and their families. And I took a picture of a friend of mine that had just died, but I just took the picture of his hand and his helmet and his rifle. And what was that? Oh, right here. His hand and his helmet and his rifle. And I thought how typical this is. He was married, and there I'm looking at him, and his wife don't even know he's gone. Well, my regret was, and I don't know why I didn't think of it, when these books come out, the wife recognized the wedding ring. Broke my heart. But she, I apologized to her, but still hurts that I missed that. The rest of it, now here is all the men that died that year that's all the men that died in our battalion. But now it was luck of the draw who got in combat, because we get on patrol and whoever run into the enemy, that's where it was. It just so happened C Company, my company, is the one that had the most run-ins. So this entire list right here, all the way down to here, is Company C. This is B Company, this is A Company, and this is Recon. Now, did I get that right? A, B, C, yeah. Now, the very best friend I ever had in my life was named John Cruz. Also the blackest man I ever met in my life. We got there the same day. He had Nigerian ancestors, and his forehead, the skin was real smooth, just perfect skin. And when he would sweat a little bit, and he was so black, the blue sky would reflect in his forehead, and I loved that. And he had these big white teeth and a voice that's about 3 octaves below mine. And John carried an M60 machine gun because he was so strong, and he walked beside me, and a lot of times I'd be treating a soldier, and his arm would get so tired holding that 50-pound machine gun up, especially with all of the round. He had loops and loops and loops of bullets on him, and he would lay it on my helmet. He would rest the barrel on my helmet while I was working on the soldier to rest his arm a little bit, and then he would pick back up, and he had that like that, putting a radius of fire in front of me to keep me alive. And on June 2nd, 1968, it was about 2 in the afternoon, John, well, I had a man down and he was going to bleed out. And I just got over to him. It had been raining, it was muddy. And the soldier was out almost half immersed in mud and muck and water. And but his wounds were up above the chest. And I was working on him. And here come John, and there was this big rock there, and I was protected there and had my knees in the mud, straddling the boy. And here come John, and I seen over the top of the rock 3 enemy soldiers. I could see the tracers coming right by us, and they were coming at us at about 10 yards away. And John, with his left hand, he put his hand on my helmet and shoved my face down in the mud while he killed those 3 people, and then one of their bullets hit him just above that eyebrow right there. And I just laid there. I thought, I just don't know. I just don't even know if it's going to be worth it anymore. And I'd got burned real bad that day. One of our armored personnel carriers, a rocket, got in there and caught all the men on fire, and I got down in there with them trying to get them out. My clothes caught on fire and burned me real bad. But I love my men so much, I gave myself a double load of morphine so I could stay out there. And life was not the same after that. And then one night I laid down on a snake, and I didn't even feel it. I just remember a real bright light, and what it was is a light on the bottom of a helicopter shining down through the trees, sucking me up through a basket. And I was late, and I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. Didn't know my name. It'd say Rose Dobbs, and I said, no. Well, it was my mom. No. Larry Dobbs, no. James Dobbs, no. And it took spinal tap after spinal tap, and I was so sick. But as soon as I got to where I could walk, I remember how dedicated I was to my men, but I couldn't remember who they were. But I just had this draw to go back out there, and they said, well, you're not ready yet. And I said, I can walk, and I'm good with this medicine, I'm going back out. So I went back out, and they made a fire base, and those mountains over there, dozers would get up there and flatten it out and make a plateau on top, and then make a camp. Have a big tent for cooked food and big cannons to keep us safe, and they always have to have a place to put trash. Well, they get a bulldozer and just start hollowing out a place and just keep digging and keep digging, maybe 10, 15 feet deep. And it's sloped on one end, sloped on the other end. You just throw your trash in there. And when you decide to leave, you just push it full of dirt. Well, I knew that I was still wasn't about myself, and it was just about dark. But I did remember that it's time to give everybody their malaria pill. So I was going around giving everybody their malaria pill, and it was just about dark, and I walked straight into that pit. And I fell on the side that was straight up and down, and when I hit the bottom, it jammed my tailbone into the wall right where they'd been doing that spinal tap. And I just went paralyzed and I laid there all night. They were looking for me. We were going outside the camp, where's Dobbs, where's Dobbs? When the sun came up the next morning, they found me, put me back in the hospital. But it was quite an experience. I lost 66 men. And I sent 180 home severely wounded. And the stories that come out of intense combat like that with the intensive love between our men, it's just undescribable. I wish I could portray it here better, but it is just a chapter that ties you to each other. And I've been thankful that my family pulled me back and got me back to where I'd started, and recovered from all my wounds, and I had 5 children and lots of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and I'm here at the VA Center, not simply because I can't walk, it's because the VA has diagnosed me as probably having Alzheimer's disease. Now my dad died with it, he had 3 brothers die with it, and so I'd have to take care of Daddy, and I know what the disease does, and I'm ready, and I come here early. I've still got my cameras out taking pictures. Oh, and they let me grow flowers here, and the flowers bring the spirit up of everybody here, seems like, and that's real rewarding. And makes me sad that I've had 2 birthdays without even seeing anybody with this pandemic. And I know probably not many people will see this, but if you see it, for God's sake, get a vaccine so I can go see my family. Now the virus is just attacking people that hadn't had their shots, and I think, like when I started this conversation with you, when the draft started in the Vietnam War, if you went to college, you didn't have to go to war. It was a deferment. If you got married, you couldn't go. You wouldn't have to go. And certain disabilities, you wouldn't have to go. Well, I chose to go. And but a lot of my friends got married real quick, so they wouldn't have to go. Some, they didn't even plan on going to college, enrolled in college, so they wouldn't have to go. And we had rioters, you know, Kent State and all of that, and all of us guys trying to do the best we could, we thought was right. And I'm proud that I answered the call, and now we've got all of these people that's not vaccinated. Well, that reminds me of the boys that got married and went to college and stuff like that to keep having to fight for their country. Don't want to get vaccinated. Well, right now, even though I've had the disease, I've had the double shots, I almost died with the disease, I'll have a cough the rest of my life. We lost 39 men in this building in 1 month. 39 to that virus. And we got people out here that will not answer the call to help their fellow citizens like we did when we chose to fight for our country. Now, I'm deeply offended by the fact that the people that won't take the vaccines, a lot of the states are offering $100 if you'll get the shot. They said, $100, okay, yeah, I'm in. So it wasn't, well, money fixed it. And it's a shame that we're having to pay people to take the vaccine. So if anybody's listening, for God's sake, I'm tired of being pinned up here. Like I said, the 2 birthdays there, I'd never even seen my family or anybody. And we had a few moments, briefly, of freedom the last 2 or 3 months. My wife picked me up to go eat. We went to the movies, we did, and then here the variant was. All the unvaccinated people just put me back in the hole again. I'll just say it makes me angry. And it makes me disappointed about my fellow citizens that they weren't willing to help. And not a whole lot else to tell. I sure enjoyed my first year, trained to be a medic at the emergency room in Brooklyn, New York, of all places. Like an ambulance runs over into Hell's Kitchen and the Bronx and up Flatbush Avenue and Brooklyn Queens Expressway, picking up knife and all the people I'm delivering babies and fixing knife stabs and gunshot. I'm doing all of this because they were a dependent of an active service member. That's all we picked up is during the Vietnam War. If you fought, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your wife, your children could be taken care of medically. And I delivered babies, everything in the world. I've had a full life. I'm not bitter about anything. I just love people. I hope you do too.
Well, Larry, that's a lot of information.
Say again?
That's a lot of information.
Yeah, that's it. That lot squeezed in there, wasn't it?
Yes. And,
I just told the things that was really important to me.
Yes, and I appreciate that. Can I follow up on some other issues?
You betcha.
So, what year were you drafted in?
I was drafted in '66, September of '66. Went to Vietnam in September of '67, and my main battles and wounds and death was from January '68 until September '68.
And what church did you belong to that identified your conscientious objector status?
Odd name, I've never heard it outside of our little community, the Church of the Firstborn.
And so, when you got your draft notice, how did you feel about it?
Gladly served. I have 23 ancestors in that church that fought World War I, World War II, Korea, and they were my idols. So I wanted to be like them. And now, I seen a speech on YouTube the other day of our state representative that is got this is the 7th district, and he's at the Capitol building in Oklahoma City. And somebody told me to look on YouTube, and he was speaking to this large mega church where thousands of people go to church. They'd asked him to speak. He's a good speaker. He's very religious, the religious church asked him. And he said, everybody needs a hero. Said, you need a hero to guide you through this life. He said, I've got a man named Larry Dobbs that's my hero. And the speech was about me. And I was just humbled by it. And I don't even remember this, but he told me, he says, when I was in the 1st grade, and Larry was in Vietnam, they asked us, everybody, the first week in school, write down, if you can write, who your hero is, who you want to be like. And he said it was Spider-Man and Superman and all these kind of people, and he wrote Larry Dobbs. And the teacher looked at it and said, are you sure that would be your hero is Larry Dobbs? He said, yes, ma'am. I wrote him a letter, and he wrote me back. And he told me how things was. And he is my hero. And that's a great speech. So I'm reaping a lot of satisfaction that things were not in vain, you know. And they could say, well, that war was unnecessary. It was unpopular. We was 20 years old. We didn't know that. We answered the call. We thought that we were doing the right thing. And I'll have to say that looking back now, it probably was an unnecessary war. China's built an island in the China Sea down there by the Philippines, and that's what we were trying to keep them from doing. They done it anyway. And the only war we lost, in the history of America. We lost. Pure and simple. And I was already gone when we lost. But I'm glad that the state of Oklahoma furnishing a place like this for me. In my very last month, when the time comes, my family is going to take care of me. But right now, I just don't know. There's just something about them having to take care of me no worse off than I am now. I just can't do it. I just can't. But they've all got their lives. They've all got their same problems and everything that goes with having a bunch of kids. I ain't going to add to that unless it's just completely necessary. And I might call on you to stay with you.
Okay. And did you have to, how does one identify as a conscientious objector?
What's that now?
How does one identify? How did you?
Conscientious objector is simply that we want to serve our country, but we have a conscientious objection of taking a life. And so, therefore, even though I was a hunter, I love my little 22 rifles and stuff. I went the conscientious objector route.
And this is something that you declare to the Army?
Say again?
You declare this to the Army?
Yeah, you declare it to the Army. And the Army's the only branch that will use conscientious objectors. Air Force, Navy, Marines, they won't accept it. It's just the regular Army. Because they've got, there's jobs. I had friends that was unloading guns and food and clothes and everything at Cameron Bay to send to them. I had friends from church that was a typist back at base camp. This is kind of interesting, I think. It's a very well, it hurts, I'll put it that way. There was a boy I sat with at church named Jackie Elston. And he had drafted the same time I was. And he got assigned, like I did, as a combat medic in Vietnam, just a few miles from me, up there in the Central Highlands. And the helicopters that come out, they'd bring ammunition, mail, food, whatever you needed. And then they go to the next camp. And they made it circling so you'd get to know those pilots, and you could run out there and if you had a note that you wanted to pass on to a friend in another company, they'd take the note. So Jackie would take my notes and he'd send me notes. And one day they were doing a combat assault and he was jumping off a helicopter and took a bullet right through the heart. And of course I knew the church was going to grieve and family and all of that. And then as time went on, back then in Vietnam they had, if you had someone killed in the line of duty, they didn't draft the next son. The family had given up. And so his brother was younger than him, so he didn't have to go. His name was Dickie. So his name, when it was killed was Jackie, and his name is Dickie. All went to church together. Well, Dickie got married a cousin of mine, and they had this baby, and they named her Jackie after the fallen soldier. Well, now she grew up and married my son, and had 3 children, and so my son married Jackie's niece. My fellow soldier's niece. Niece. And so their kids are Jackie's great nieces and my grandchildren.
Wow.
I do resent the fact that they, and I do resent it, but I don't know what you can do about it, is the way it's set up, that the defense department is paying me all of this money for the Bronze Star and Purple Heart and all of that. And so I've got this income, and in Oklahoma, if you have those medals, you pay nothing to stay here. So all that money is just available to help my family during this pandemic. Well, this is wonderful, and I'm so thankful for all this money. But Jackie, his parents got $10,000 to bury him. End of story. Not fair. Not fair that I could have this wonderful income, and Jackie's parents got $10,000 to bury him. And, but 3 years ago, there was a big nice bridge south of Cordell where I live down there, and the state legislature voted it to name it as a big sign, the Jackie Elston Memorial Bridge. Great big sign, professionally done, and see it going both ways. So everybody remembers his name when they leave town going south.
Good.
I'm talked out. Any more questions? I'll answer anything you got.
Sure. So, did you choose to be a medic of the options, or
I didn't have the option.
they made you a medic?
Yeah. I could have, you could have went in all ways. They could have put me in the cook, or the clerical, or the truck driver. I could have even been on the ships going back and forth supplies. I could even been stateside and help train, or help, or worked in the kitchen here stateside. They was, of the men drafted, 1 in 10 men fought. And it's just a luck of the draw. But I'll tell you this, and this has been proven, and it shows how racism's ugly head was, how bad it was back then. There obviously has to be somebody assigned this name to this duty. Larry Dobbs to be medic in Company C, 8th Battalion, 4th Infantry Division. Somebody has to do that. That happened at the Pentagon. Well, when I went to the Army, I always liked statistics. And I was interested in racism. And just because it's, I just think it's ungodly that we would look down on any of God's children. And you know, I told you, they said I might have Alzheimer's. I have these blank spots. Would you repeat what I was just saying? The Pentagon. They pick, when you're going over there, they already know where you're going to wind up. The people that was doing the picking, and back to statistics. When I went, the statistic was, for there was 1 black person of every 10 white people. In other words, there were 10% of the population. Well, the guys at the Pentagon was picking who that was what they call the point of the spear, the ones that run headlong into the enemy. I got out there at that company that day. It was a 136-man company I was responsible for. 136. 102 were black. They were putting the blacks on the front line. And it's been proven now, some of them even done prison time, that they were racially I can't think of the word, furnishing, I'll use that word. They were knowingly furnishing black men for the point of the spear. And that's the ones that died. And that was the ones that could fight better than any white man ever thought about fighting. Because they were devoted. They were devoted to the friendship. Beside, they knew that if they didn't fight, the one on the right or the one on the left was going to die. And I've talked a lot about these soldiers dying. Think about what this is really like. To run over to a young boy that I know and love, hoping I can keep him from bleeding out and he don't even have a face. It'll get down into your soul. It will just, and when I put them in the body bags, zip it up, I always kissed them on the forehead, even if they didn't have a forehead. And I don't know why it come to mind that I've always said this, I commend thee to God. And then I'd zip it up across their face. War, oh my goodness, it's, we glorify it a lot, me included. I still watch SEALs team movies and all of that. It's exciting, it sells tickets, but out in the jungle, face to face, especially to draftees that wasn't brought up that way, it's just unnecessary. But the Bible says there'll be wars and rumors of wars. So there's always going to be wars, and it's all about money. Always. I don't know of any war that's ever been fought that's not about money and power. And I'll quit preaching now.
So you were assigned to be a combat medic.
Yeah, I didn't have a choice.
They put you into training, including sending you to Brooklyn to toughen you up.
Pardon?
They sent you to Brooklyn to toughen you up.
Right, because Brooklyn had the VA hospital there had the most active emergency room in the whole military because there's so many dependents there. They knew that I would, especially in the back of an ambulance, I'd see the worst of the worst. And we even had people that couldn't speak English join the Army. They had got a work visa and come here, and why they just all land in New York, you know, on Flatbush Avenue and Brooklyn Queens Expressway. And Hell's Kitchen had a building that was one of my first runs. I think it was 69 floors. Run down to a brick and mortar building, but there's broken windows and everything, and everybody was out on the street because it didn't have any heat in there. And these people's in there sweating and freezing, and I had to deliver a baby up on the top floor, and there was no elevator. Well, there was an elevator. It was a 6x6 box, and you had a crank that you had to crank up and down the cable, and she was far too big to get in there, and it had to be delivered right there. And I hadn't thought of that in a long time. I had a motorcycle when I got drafted, and one day up in New York, I was going to the barracks, and a big old wood crate out there. It had Larry Dobbs wrote on it. And Dad and his friend, a good carpenter, built this beautiful crate for my Harley motorcycle. And that's what you need on the streets of New York, is a bike.
All right, and then
The cops ain't gonna chase you because they know they can't chase you.
as a combat medic, obviously you're not using any weapons, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, combat medic carry a weapon. They carry a machine gun if they want to.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Did you train
I was
with
the only
those?
unarmed medic in the company.
Okay, so
There's 5 medics and I was the only unarmed one.
but Did you train on those and not carry them, or you didn't? You refused training
Say
with
that
weapons?
again now?
Were you trained on those weapons?
No,
None.
no. And I didn't tell them I could shoot.
And you did not carry a weapon.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that you received two Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star. Can you tell me the circumstances of receiving those?
The Bronze Star and the Purple Heart was both awarded on June 2nd of 1968. Both of them on the same day. And the other Purple Heart was actually issued to the Republic of South Vietnam Military Division because I got wounded with them. So it didn't qualify. In other words, if you went to the Justice Department, it starts at the top. It would say I've got a Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Army Commendation, and then an asterisk by the Gallantry Cross. The Defense Department will not list the second Purple Heart.
All right. And what were the circumstances for the Bronze Star? What happened that merited you receiving that?
They gave me the Bronze Star, and this is the crazy thing. When we got ready to come home, we walked right out of the jungle into this big jetliner. Mud still to our knees, ticks and fleas all over us, we hadn't bathed in weeks. Got on that plane and took off. And we got to San Francisco, we still had the same clothes on, hadn't bathed in weeks. And what was the question?
How did you get the Bronze Star?
Oh, the Bronze Star. The Bronze Star was for being willing to get down in that armored personnel carrier in the fire, and it caught my clothes on fire. And a little footnote there, it's kind of, I think it's interesting. On June 2nd that we're talking about, lost a lot of men that day. And my sergeant, my immediate sergeant, was named Charles Farrell. Dr. Sergeant Charles Farrell. He was a black man, lifetime soldier. E6, E7. And so he rode on top of the track with the big 50 caliber machine gun. Awesome, awesome weapon. And there was a hatch where that gun was, where you could stand up in there and fire, but you get tired all day, so that we get like a 2x6 board and put across the hatch, and you can sit up there and still have a perfect vantage point. And then the back of the lid of the armored personnel carrier has got a lid, a big rectangular lid that you can pull a spring and it'll fold all the way up to where the 6 fighting men can stand up in there and fire in different directions. And I was down in there, we thought we was in a real safe place. We was on patrol, but we thought we didn't know there was any enemy around. And I was down inside with Joe Gunn and Skyver and a bunch of them playing cards. Old tractor going like this through the jungle, we just playing cards and laughing, and we'd had whiskey, we could have drank it, but nobody get whiskey. And so Sergeant Charles Farrell was on the top, and then I had a good friend named Hernandez. He was a skinny Mexican boy. I'm sorry, Puerto Rican. Skinny Puerto Rican. And he was the only one that guard had his M16 out there. All of a sudden, a mortar went. little mortar round hit on top of the track, just in front of that front hatch. And I had heard the gunfire, so I put my aid bag on my shoulder and was fixing to stand up, but I didn't have my head above the top. I was still reset. But Hernandez was standing there. And when that mortar round took off, it took Charles Farrell's head just slick as a dime. Took his head off. And Hernandez, a piece of that shrapnel hit him on, let's see, like this, hit him right here and took the left side of his whole face off all the way back to the ear, bone and all. And he was screaming, "Doc, I can't see, because when that mortar hit, the dust that had accumulated up there, you couldn't see anything. I didn't even know Charles Farrell had lost his head. And Hernandez fell back on me. "I can't see, Doc," he was screaming, and all the blood. And I had a bunch of bandages. They're just called 11x17s. Big bandage, real thick, with ties on it. And I just jammed some morphine right into a vein, and where it just knocked him out real quick. And he's going to die of hysterical shock if I didn't. I gave him the morphine. Muscle started relaxing, and I got a lot of stuff from Sears Roebuck. I had these big jars of Vaseline. I dipped it down in there and then smeared it all over this where the bandage would stick. Put that 11x17 bandage on there, put it around there, and tied it as tight as I could on both sides. And it stopped the bleeding. I couldn't believe it. That Vaseline more than anything. But then he had this little, right there on his jugular vein, a little tiny pinhole that the blood would squirt down 10 feet because it was such a little hole, the pressure was there, and oh no, what am I going to do? I can't shut his jugular vein off. It'd go brain dead in just a few minutes. And I just happened to look down, and there's a roll of duct tape laying there on the floor. And you know, duct tape, when you pull it out and you use it, you lay it back down, there's a little end that kind of comes out like a tail. You know, they stuck down on there. And I got that, and I remembered back when I would do construction with Daddy, how it would stick to itself, you know, the stickiness. So I got another little gauze, and I put Vaseline on that hole, and I put that on there, and then I pull off about 3 feet of that duct tape. I put it over his head, and I put it right on that gauze, and I started pulling it. And I stuck the duct tape back here to itself, and kept pulling it, and it kept pulling it, and it quit. And I felt on his temple, heart still beating. So I got this duct tape, and I started sticking it to itself, got all the way down to his neck, and I bunched it up right here, or over here, and kept bunching it up until that bleeding stopped, and I let go, and he lived. And did you know, when he got back to Tokyo, that's one of our big hospitals, they could do plastic surgery. They done wonders to that boy's face. You cannot tell it. It's perfect. He keeps makeup on it, of course, thing. And that eye don't move. Let's see. Keep standing there like that. His left eye don't move. But you talking to him, you never know him. And he decided a few years ago that he wanted me to meet his family, but he didn't remember where I lived. And so his sister was good at finding stuff, and she looked and found it. And I got this message on my phone that I missed a call from somebody named, listen to his name, America Personal. America Persico. What a beautiful name. Puerto Rican. And that was his sister. And she found me. And so the family all up in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, the big, big family. They all decided to meet in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where she's superintendent of schools at one of the schools in northern Tulsa. And they got a big house with a 4-car garage. I want you to know they cooked for days. They had 43 people there. And I drove up with one of my sons and 2 or 3 other people. And when we got to the house, all 40 Puerto Ricans was out in the yard. And we had a feast in that garage. They served food, and they had a dump truck load of food left over. America Persico. And we got close enough that I told you I've lost a son. America Persico was the first one at the funeral. And left her job at the high school and drove all the way out there. Sure, lots of friendships. I took my family back to New York City to show them where I worked. And on the way I went through Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to visit a family, one of the guys that I lost. And he was a volunteer, he was infantry. And his name is Victor Dobbs. And he was a model, and his younger brother still is a model for Stanley Tool Company in their catalogs. And handsome. And he was in one of those that burned to death in there. I'm going to show you. Picture of him. I really want to show you. But Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I went to visit them, and they appreciated it so much. There's typically what I'd run on. Just typical, that's when the battle first starts. And I'm trying to stop the bleeding. And now this here is members of the Black Star Regiment. That's the people we were fighting. And it made me mad. You see that guy bent over that soldier. The Black Star Regiment had a belt buckle that had a black star on it. And it's quite a trophy. And there that boy's laying dead, and that guy's stealing that black star off his deal.
Did you ever treat a North Vietnamese soldier?
Did I ever what?
Treat.
Oh yeah,
You did?
lots, yeah. In fact, we got a picture here of one.
How did your fellow soldiers feel about you doing that?
This book.
Huh?
This book.
No.
The Vietnamese. They knew how I felt.
How did they feel?
They just stood over the side and watched. They knew better than to say something. Because they knew how I felt about racism, and I told them one day, I got them all together, they called them gooks and words like that, and I said, I want to tell you something. If you're going to talk like that, make sure I'm not around, because I won't have it. Because that boy that I pointed to another dead enemy soldier. I said, see him? I said, he sprang from his mother's womb and was kicking and screaming to get to that nickel to get mother's milk. She probably walked him to school in his little teepee hat. He probably helped her in her garden, and now she will never know where he's at. But we left him laying there. None of them are buried. All the bones of them boys are still laying there. and Sergeant Farrell's head. Of course, the animal's scared, drags them off and stuff, but that was one of the sad parts of the war, I thought, is we have 50 dead enemy soldiers laying there. Walked off from it. The animals eat them, you know, they decay. Sometimes we'd go by 100 yards from them on another patrol, you know, and you can smell the decay, and it wasn't right. We knew they couldn't get home. At least we could have dug a hole. You know, I told you John Cruz, my friend that took the bullet for me. I want you to meet John Cruz. Right there.
Okay.
See smooth forehead, reflected the sun. Best friend a man can have. Put his hand on my helmet, shoved my face down in the mud, and took the bullet. And so, if I would complain about anything right now, I don't think God would like it at all. I ain't got anything to complain about.
Where in Vietnam were you?
It was in the Central Highlands, and it's kind of called Pleiku. And there's a road called Highway, just dirt, but it's called a Highway 46, I think it was. And it went all the way to the Cambodian border, and there's a bridge across it. And if you divided the country in half, east and west, we were about 30 miles north of it. And we supplied firepower and things. So have you ever heard of Quezon? The rock pile is on one side. Let's see, Quezon, rock pile, Camp Carroll. They was living underground. They had to. They would just bombard as much as they went underground. But somebody had to bring them food. You couldn't bring it in on airlift anymore because they had bombed the airstrips so much couldn't nobody land. So we get in our APCs, our armored personnel carriers, and there's a real good paved road the Army Corps engineers have paved all the way to Quezon. Pretty straight, really, and real good pavement. Well, you can get those tracks at the armored personnel carriers, and in the back there's a big old toolbox with a bunch of bolts in it and rubber pad. And between each one of those cleats that make the thing go, there's a hole, and you can put a bolt in that hole and put this rubber pad on there, and then you can go down the highway just like you go a car. And we go 45 miles an hour down that road trying to avoid any kind of contact with the enemy, taking food, weapons, things like that up to Quezon, Camp Carroll, and the rock line. And the biggest battle, I guess, maybe that we had was in a place called the Shaw Valley. And we were told to go up there and patrol. In fact, there's a black and white hour-long movie, actual footage about this battle, but it wasn't about us. Well, we're supposed to, it's tall hill, covered with trees and vines, and we're told to patrol over it, and then over it the other way, and then dissect it. And other teams was doing it too. We used to pay it separated for days and days. We'd eat nothing but lush, jungle, snakes, regular stuff, and we told them there's ain't nothing here. And so we sat out there 2 or 3 days, and they said, they're there. They're there. Then again, 5 days, over and over and over. And finally, they were so sure they were there, we dug a trench down at the bottom all the way around it. It was like 2 miles long, about 6 feet deep, kind of like they did in World War II. And I'll get ahead of myself now and tell you, they was there a long time before we ever come. And they had hollowed out that mountain. Literally hollowed it out. And all the debris from their digging was years old, and the vines and everything. Oh, you couldn't tell it. You couldn't tell it. They had hospitals in there. And that's how that we had detected them. I found out that they was bringing wounded up there and disappearing. And so we dug this trench around there, and they was going to assault it in 4 different ways. This is a real tragedy. Behind us, some big twin rotor helicopter landed. A bunch of Marines got on. Well, us and Marines didn't get along too good because they thought they was better than us, you know, we thought. And they come and jumped in the trench with us and said they sent us up here to take this hill. And they wanted us to show a bunch of pussies how to take the hill, the way they put it. And I said, all right. Well, come time, they told us to stay in the trench. And they spread out, and they headed to the dead run right at the bottom of the hill. It's about 50 yards over there. And they disappeared into the brush, and I guess it was about 50 yards up there, the whole side of that hill way back. They killed every one of those Battalion Marines with napalm. And me and the other medics had to go in there later and with body bags and retrieve the bodies. And that napalm was so hot that the first guy I come on to, he was leaning up against this tree, just crisp. And because of his bodily fluid and everything, he just stuck to the tree. And it was just, he was touching his hand and just come off, you know, just black. And we had to back those 99 men up. And anyway, we finally found those little tiny holes. The Vietnamese are little that could get in there, you know, and they had brush over them, and they had them all around there, and they had living quarters, hospital, battery run lights, just crazy. That was Asia. It was in the Aishaw Valley. What's the name of the mountain though? Was, oh, I can't think of it. Not long. Can't think of it.
I think I know the answer to this question, but I ask it anyways. Okay?
Yeah.
Have you heard the phrase "war is hell"? Do you agree with that statement?
Oh, I had a friend. Well, he's going to cover that book, John Cortez. He's one had that rifle on him, you know, Johnny Cortez. He was too close to an explosion. He'd been there about 10 months, and it blew his eardrum and just destroyed him. He went completely deaf. So he got to go home to Houston, and he will forever be deaf, but he became a postal worker, had a real successful life with wife and kids. And after he got home, he wrote me a letter. I still owe it. And he said, I can stick my fingers up in my nose and claw it till it's bloody. I can't get rid of the smell. He said, I still smell it. And rotting flesh is just possibly the most reprehensible odor, I guess there is. Worse than any animal, because animals have that hide on them that keeps a lot of those odors out. The human body, it starts decaying in just a few minutes, and because it's still got the blood in there. And flies, oh my goodness. Within 30 minutes, the human body is just black, it just flies. You know, that's nature though. You know, I knew that. But, and I remember when a cow died in the pasture, it's always so repulsive, all those flies. And the parents would have just broke their heart. When I was wounded, like I said, the clothes was burned, and a lot of my body was exposed. We didn't have any blankets or anything like that. And it was just felt like your skin was crawling with flies. You know? Well, they know when something's dead. That nature's way of keeping the earth clean, I guess.
Did you ever get used to what you were doing?
You're going to get used to it. I don't have bad dreams about it.
But when you were there, did you over time get used to the ghastly images or the violence, the blood? Did you finally become numb to it, or?
No, I just cried all the time. Just cried all the time. That's what happens when you just really are thankful that this person's in your life, and all of a sudden you ain't. You know, all the grief. You know, I told you I lost a son, and first thing when I wake up every morning, every night when I go to bed, because it's only been 2 years, and it hurts. Oh, it hurts. But over there, it wasn't as bad, but it seemed like I was just losing everybody I loved, you know. And I was the one to save them. It was my job to pull them back, and there was 66 of them that I couldn't pull back. Dennis Naring, I was telling you a while ago, that boy from Minnesota, I couldn't find a mark on him. He's the one that, I may not have said this, but he's standing right next to me, and he took that bullet right there, but he wasn't bleeding. And he looked at me, and he looked like he was trying to sneeze. He was going like that, and then like that. And he was a lovely boy, handsome. Girls was crazy over him back in Wills, Minnesota.
What about those that you saved?
Those that what?
You counted how many you lost.
How many?
You counted how many you lost. You said 66.
I lost 66.
How many did you save?
Oh, I tend not to think about that as much. Because not for sure. I just got them on the chopper. They was hands-on within 20 minutes at the MASH unit back, and then the Cameron Bay, then to Tokyo. So I don't say that. Let me just put it like this. Let's don't say save.
Stabilized. Stabilized.
Stabilized. Yeah, that's a good word. Prevented death. I prevented death. Immediate death. Some died after they got out and got back.
But you didn't keep track of that, though.
No.
Why not?
I think because of my love of God, when you say you save somebody, God's the one that pulls the trigger, you know. So I don't claim it. I prevented it long enough to get them help. But no, let's don't say I saved them.
But you didn't keep score of how many you prevented from dying.
Yeah.
Why not?
Oh, I know approximately. I think one of the other guys did. It seemed like from morning to night, I'm intent on getting everybody the pills and the malaria treatment and everything like this, and making sure they're swallowing their medicine and all of this. But somebody told me, we call it shipped. I had shipped 104. That's what shipped.
Okay.
I put that many on the helicopter.
And if I'm doing my math correctly, that's twice as many as you think you lost.
I'd like to think so.
And I would also remind you, you said that God pulls the trigger. Well, I don't know if you lost anybody either then, if God's pulling the trigger.
Yeah, no, he pulls the trigger. I think sometimes I would look at my hands when I was working so hard to save somebody. It felt like he was my hands. I sure would like to think that. I would like to think that.
Did anything from your experience in Vietnam impact you when you returned to the States?
Trying to hide ugliness, people wanting to know all about it, and I just couldn't talk about it hardly, you know. I wanted to, I come in, I wanted to have fun and get married and really live again. I thought, I've got this, God gave me a chance to live, and I'm going to live. And I failed him lots of times during my life. They say, well, that's just human. I know it is, but still, I sinned, but he is a forgiving God. If you repent, if you admit to him that this was wrong and I'm sorry, he will just almost instantly forgive you, I think.
Did you have any type of nightmares after Vietnam?
Yeah. But it was all about sorrow. I dreamed about my boys that I couldn't pull through, and I dreamed what they looked like, their faces and their arms tore off, full of bullets, burned, cut, you name it. But in a little way too, I felt that way about the enemy's soldiers laying there. We called it boys killing boys. It was boys killing boys. Didn't know any better. Protecting our country.
Did those nightmares stop?
Mm-hmm.
Did those nightmares stop for you?
No, but I'd rather not call them nightmares. Let's just call it, I had sad dreams of missing and the fun we could have had. One named John Cucci, he wasn't killed in Oak Harbor, Washington. He's come down here all the way from Washington City for that. Monster of a man. Don Cucci. Don Cucci. He was a warrior. I've never seen anything like it.
when we'd be on the armored personnel carriers and not on foot, and we would attack, he'd have the foot on the gas, and he'd have that track at the air to get into the battle and get it over with. And we had those new armored personnel carriers that had pivot steering. You could pull this lever, and this wheel would go back, or this track would go back, push this way, and this would go forward. It'd spin on itself. And he would head into the bunker complexes. You could see them, the dirt over them, you know. He'd just run up over them and just like that, crunch them in, just as fast as he could crunch them in, save a lot of lives. Where everybody else is kind of holding back. Oh, I'm going to get killed, I'm going to get killed. Not John. He had this big old mustache. And he gained rank so fast. You know, these days, in the Army, it's really something to get to E5. Really something to get to E6. He'd been in the Army less than a year, and he was already in E7. Because of his leadership and because of the ones above him were being killed. Empty slot. Who fills it? John. You know. And but he didn't want a career of it. And they called out there on the radio one time, told him to come to base camp. They wanted to interview him. They wasn't going to just hang him E8. They wanted to interview him before they gave him E8. Hadn't even been in the Army 18 months. That's 3 up and 3 down. And his mustache always covered his mouth. Big old mustache. In fact, that's the reason I wear this one. Is John. And same color. And I said, John, if you're going to go in there and be interviewed for E8, ain't you going to cut your mustache back a little bit? You're going to go over there with all of those clean cut bosses, and ain't you afraid they'll give you E8 with that mustache like that? Yeah, just real big old boy. I don't like it, I'll just be E7 with a mustache.
When you came back from Vietnam, did you have any type of nervousness or jitters or none of that?
No. When I got back to my church, it all went away.
The only
Sitting
thing
on that pew with all of those people. Now, if I hadn't had a church and all them people, I'd probably been mean. I'd have probably been, I don't know, hateful. Boy, to see all those loving people. On Sunday morning, 400 people there, nobody could get a seat, so you have to get there early. And Daddy up there, the elder of the church, and already had a girl picked out. I was married for 5 months.
And when you came back to the States, how were you welcomed when you returned home?
Oh, open arms. I was spit on in San Francisco, rocks thrown at me, but
Were you wearing your uniform?
yes, I was wearing a uniform, and it was clean though. They gave us a clean one, and but when I come in that air terminal there at Oklahoma City, Will Rogers, the hall was full. You know, it was full. And
Were you the only one, or was
I was the only one. And it was the church that turned out. And it seems funny now, at 75 years old, all those people are gone now. Or most of them are gone. Now, all my grief is centered on my son now.
What did you do when you came back home?
I went straight to work with Daddy on the construction crew. With the money that I made on the books, with it, like I said, I was married for 5 months. I bought a home way out in the country down the creek, and I bought that, and I bought a 1964 Chevy Impala, and that would be in 1969, so it's 5 years old, but it was just like new. And bought a new shotgun, started shooting again. Love to shoot. Love to knock the tin can out of there.
And then did you do construction the rest of your career?
Until I got hurt. No. 92. I fell in 92. I'm just making this as a statement, not a bragging at all. I had a very, very large construction company. And at one time I was building a supermarket just right there by Whiteman Air Force Base in Kansas City. I was building Coca-Cola's main storage plant down in Georgia. I think that town.
Atlanta?
Atlanta. And I was building 2 fire stations here in Oklahoma. Fire station in Arkansas. Oh, and my crown achievement, the indoor football field at OU University. Yeah. Full football field under one roof.
The indoor stadium?
And
Indoor.
Indoor. And at the same time I built that, I built a big 2-story hotel down at Altus, Oklahoma, a Ford tractor dealership in Fort Worth, a John Deere dealership north of town. You all see it. It is huge. It's a big, big one. A Chevrolet dealership here in town. Right next to us, the Delisi concrete plant. And over on the other side of town, the ONG Service Center. Build them all at once. Oh, and 3 pipe yard buildings in Pueblo, Colorado. And I had this Piper Warrior. Bought it new. Hottest little airplane you can imagine. And I was in it all the time. And my wife was at me all the time. She says, "You ain't doing nothing in the world. You're not fooling me. You're getting these jobs all over the United States so you could buy an airplane." And I said, "That's right."
And
yeah, I became a pilot, and my son that passed away, he's the one that was going blind. He was in the cockpit with me every minute. And I let him fly, even though he couldn't see, because I'd get us up to 10,000 feet, real good cruising altitude, trim it out to where it's pretty much staying at the altitude you got it at. And his seat got the same yoke, got all the same controls. And are you familiar with the gauges in an airplane console? You ever hear of a VOR? Okay. It is neatest thing in the world. All of the United States, they've built these little buildings just out in the middle of nowhere. I can't think how many they are. Probably 200 or 300. And they got look like an Indian teepee in the middle, and there's a broadcaster on the top of it. And it's got 180 transmitters around the edge of the gutter line. Each one of them's got its own frequency. And it's sending out that frequency just into the world, into the air. And if you're going across here, you need to go to an airport left north of here, but you're going west. But you know that little deal is on vector 126. You just dial this to 126. There's this needle hanging down like this. It'll go all the way over. Well, you're going this way. And the rule is simple, fly into the needle. So you just bank, start flying toward the needle. And you get on, when you get on that needle at that place you're going to, just level out and it'll go straight to it. So, it's not rocket science to get around in the dark. And so I let him run the VOR because he could still see good enough. He'd watch the altitude for me, and then I would pretend like I was asleep. Really made him proud, you know. And because he's like 13 at this time. And it really made him proud, but I wasn't asleep. I wasn't about to go to sleep. And we had Gatorade bottles in there. And there's a little window over here on the side, just on the left side. It's got a little deal you turn and you can open it in. And what it's for is when you start your engine, you yell out clear out that window for it's pretty for. But it's the perfect size of a Gatorade bottle. And so we never did have to stop and go to the bathroom anywhere because we had our Gatorade bottles. We'd fill it up and he'd like to be up at, let's say, 10,000 feet. We're out here on western Oklahoma and nobody lives out there, you know. You'd say, okay, until I land on that sagebrush, see that pile of sagebrush? Well, he still could see big enough to see that. I said, okay, I'd drop it and then we'd bank and go around and see we'd hit our target with a jar full of pee in a jar. We had a time now. Boy, he loved to fly.
And behind you, can you comment on the background that you brought today for the interview?
Say it again.
Can you comment on the background?
Oh, yes. Me and my wife was eating in this restaurant in Oklahoma City, breakfast, and we seen this couple over there that they were so large that each one of them had to have 2 chairs for their butt. And we weren't making fun, we just noticed it. They come over to us after they got through eating and told us that they were retired. They like to go around the state, the nation, finding men and women that had Purple Hearts. And he said, and I wondered how they knew, but the emblem was on the back of my wheelchair. And so that's how they knew. And said, if you give us your name and address, we've got people that will make you a Purple Heart quilt. And I said, okay. And then we forgot about it. And time went on, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And then this church here in Oklahoma called me. And they're women, that's all they do. They get this fabric from the Army. And everywhere you look is Army graphics. And there's a bunch of dog tags and flags and you name it. It's just full of stuff. And me and my wife stayed all afternoon visiting with the nicest ladies there was. And I don't know where them people are, don't even know their name. I asked the people who had this, said, well, no, we just get letters from them. And we need one for this guy. And yeah, it's really special.
Is there anything you would like to add that I did not ask you today?
No, I feel like I'm honored, very honored to be, that you'd come here. It makes me feel like, see, a lot of these guys feel forgotten, you know, And this is a very restrictive place trying to protect us. Well, trying to restrict a bunch of soldiers, old combat soldiers, is a tough deal. So they've got some rules that are so hard to follow, but they are necessary. Like getting too friendly with a nurse, things like that. Just don't happen. And we can't loan each other money. I got in trouble here a while back, and they don't mind coming down hard on you either. And they have to. I understand that now. Didn't at first. But this, lost my train of thought there. The rules. This housekeeper. She worked hard. And after a few months, I noticed her eyes. She could not keep them open. And I asked her what the trouble was. She said, I got 2 little girls that are just in the hospital all the time with severe asthma attacks. Just sometimes I think they're going to die. She said, I set up with them. I got to come here, mop these floors, hard work. And I watched her, and I'd always ask her about her girls. Well, about 6 months ago, she got a better job up in Kansas. And we're giving 1 month's notice. And I knew when her last day was, a month's notice. And so I knew I couldn't help her, but I was going to watch her when she left. So they had a party for her, and I just stayed back there in the lunchroom, kind of kept my eye open. And they wear these, the housekeepers wear this big smock with big pockets on the side that kind of open all that. And I put $200 or $300 it was cash in an envelope. And she's going out down the hallway, wheelchair silent, and was going behind her quite a ways. And just before she goes out the back door, she's already signed out, been paid, done. I just go by her like I didn't even notice who she was, but when I did, I dropped that envelope in that deal. And I said, oh, are you leaving me? Yeah. And I said, well, I miss you, and I wish you good luck with the girls. She said, well, thank you. And she left. About 2 weeks later, the administrator and 3 of her enforcers, I call it, come out there where the flowers was and said, we hear you've been giving money to a nurse. I said, no, I have not given money to her. She said, well, somebody sent me. And then I thought about that. I said, that was for her asthmatic girls. They're in the hospital all the time. She's always crying about it. And she had already signed out, paid, done. But her enforcers had. But she wasn't out the door. I blew up. I did. I said, do you really want yourself to be known in this beautiful community as somebody that's coming down hard on somebody that didn't give money to 2 sick girls? I said, I'll be glad to spread it if you want to be known that way. Well, no. And then that's when they gave me permission to grow flowers. Oh, I'm talked out. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Are you about finished?
Yes. Any final words you would like to tell future generations?
No, just thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And God bless America.